Hi, welcome to the Elle Russ Show, where I deliver content intended to inspire, educate, and motivate. Engage with me online at elleruss.com and on social media. Enjoy the show. Today, my guest is Tom Bilyeu. He is a billion-dollar entrepreneur who built his success from the ground up. He's the CEO and co-founder of Impact Theory, a media studio created to influence the cultural subconscious by producing empowering nonfiction and fiction content, including the company's flagship series, Impact Theory with Tom Bilyeu, where Tom interviews the world's highest achievers in order to unlock their secrets to success and powerful mindset. Previous to Impact Theory, Tom co-founded Quest Nutrition, and as president, he grew the second fastest growing Inc. 500 billion-dollar company by 57,000%. Tom devised an innovative yet practical marketing plan to organically connect with the consumer, a feat that has influenced a number of corporations today. Enjoy the show and connect with Tom on social media and visit impacttheory.com. Hey, Tom, welcome. So good to have you.
So good to be here.
So much fun. I still get calls from when I was on Health Theory with you talking about hypothyroidism and your platform. I mean, I'm just going to say it. I'm going to give the love from everyone who can't give it directly to you. Everyone loves you and Lisa so much. You guys do so much for so much. Do you feel the love from everyone?
I will say yes, first of all, but I will say that Lisa is the one that gets and deserves the love. And I just try to warm my hands on that. I actually have a hilarious story about how much more likable my wife is than I am, like really, truly. So yeah, but it's amazing. And the number of people that have expressed, how much the content has impacted their lives, it's incredible. I could not ask for anything more than that these ideas and the people that we present to them, change lives and make things better. It's amazing.
Yeah, you're just the coolest, most encouraging people. And I want to just get into some things along the way. I have some questions for you about life. You've interviewed hundreds of people about mindset, and you also with Impact University have such an incredible program for people to get on top of it and pursue the dreams that they want in life. But where was your first mindset shift? Or was it a book? Was it perhaps an interview you saw? What ignited your inward journey? I mean, were you always like that? Did you form Quest Nutrition already having that mindset, or did you kind of get into that later?
It's so interesting. You were asking me this question on the perfect day because I just had a realization earlier when Lisa and I were filming an episode of Relationship Theory. I was thinking about, I don't even remember what the initial thing was. Oh, I was saying that, when I first met her dad, my instinct was to be like water. And I was like, where did I get that instinct? And I was like, oh my God, that's right. When I was 15 or 16, thereabouts, I got introduced to the Tao Te Ching, and I became obsessed with that philosophy, which is there's so many elements of a growth mindset hiding in the Tao Te Ching. And so I realized that really planted the first seeds of self-development. Now, of course, I wouldn't have thought of it that way at that point. It felt entirely like a spiritual journey. But that really was the beginning of all of this. And of course, it's, a very rocky road. And so I go to college and I do well in college. But by the time I graduate, I slide into a really dark place and think I'm a loser and that I'm never going to amount to anything. And, so my early 20s are really brutal and definitely did not have a growth mindset. Taoism was not coming to my aid back then. But as I started learning about the brain and researching about that, then that really sparked this feeling of maybe brain plasticity is real. Maybe I really can get better. So maybe just because I'm, bad today, or in language that I would use myself, just because I'm dumb today doesn't mean I have to be dumb tomorrow. And that was extraordinarily freeing. And so now you marry that to the stuff I'd read in the Tao Te Ching, marry that with a dawning awakening of people like Tony Robbins, with the literature in the science coming out about brain plasticity. And I just decided to act as if brain plasticity were real, because it was being hotly debated when I first learned about it. And as I leaned into that, I actually started getting better. And so that then led me to thrive in business because I believed that I could get better. And so by the time Quest came around, I had built, call it 80% of the mindset that I have now. And that's what allowed me to be successful in Quest, is because you go into something that you don't know anything about. I mean, I knew nothing about manufacturing. and certainly knew nothing about scaling a business that fast, and really didn't know anything about scaling a manufacturing operation. And so having a growth mindset and, all of those ideas, and then have it put to the test in a crucible like that really forged me. And so, yeah, it was a very interesting and maybe strange journey that all began with the idea of being like water.
Well, and that sort of admitted ignorance is really great to hear, because you don't need to know. And so many people don't take the first step because they feel they need to know so much. But sometimes the first step is just go talk to someone who knows about it.
Yeah, I would say always the first step. And then when you're learning that, and so whether you're talking to somebody via a book, a YouTube video, a podcast, or actually meeting them in person, or, however you slice it or dice it. But if that's your first step, make sure that your second step is taking action on what they tell you. And that action can be as simple as explaining what you just learned to somebody else to make sure that you're reinforcing that idea in your own mind so that you actually retain it. Or it could be going out and using it. So I know that my EA has absolutely fallen in love with you because you gave her advice around her thyroid issues that she's been able to actually take action on and have a massive impact. And so if she had just gone and learned from you, that would not have been very helpful. But going, learning, and then immediately, literally that day, taking action, you can actually make change. And I find so many people, they learn, but they don't act.
Let's talk about action, because I interviewed a guy who said that studies actually show that taking action ignites the motivation. When we're all waiting for the motivation to ignite the action, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's absolutely true. First of all, whatever motivation you have in the beginning is going to be pretty slight. It's going to be very transient. And over time, through taking action and getting better, and you get in that reciprocal loop of, whoa, I'm getting better at this. And it allows me to do something that really matters to me. And so now you've got this positive feedback going. And the more that you're able to do that matters to you, the more you want to become capable of so that you can do even more that matters to you. And so now you're in a virtuous cycle. But if you never take action, then all of these ideas remain theoretical. And so that kind of motivation wanes. And so getting into that positive loop plus adding on meaning and purpose, now the stuff really begins to do something. And as you're pursuing meaning and purpose, you will inevitably be serving other people, because I don't think that you get to meaning and purpose if it's just focused on yourself. And that grouping of things is the superpower. That's the thing that really unleashes people and keeps them motivated and focused. So yeah, if you're waiting for a wave of momentum to grab you and carry you all the way to success, you're going to be waiting for a very long time.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I don't want to execute my ideas, but I force myself to start, and then suddenly I'm excited and I get motivated and I'm into it. But sometimes
progress.
Yeah, it's sometimes you have to just jump in there. So all of these years with all this development you've done, and of course, hundreds of experts you've interviewed, what were some of your Achilles heels or shadows? What are some qualities and characteristics about your old self that you recognized and you're like, I don't like this, or that had become problematic somehow, and you had to actively change the way you thought and behaved?
There's really two things that have been my primary struggles. So number one is a fear that I'm not smart enough to figure out the puzzles that I need to solve in order to have the kind of impact that I want to have. And then that I'm too lazy to do the work. And those were—
That's interesting. No one would think of you as lazy, right? So get in there.
Correct. And so this is where I want people to understand.
So you're putting on a good front.
Well, what I'm doing is using tactics. And so ultimately, once people understand that I am lazy and that I am not somebody that, oh, well, it's easy for Tom because he has all this motivation and drive. No, what happened is I realized that I didn't have drive and that I had these huge dreams, but I was an empty dreamer. And then I was awash with shame because my father-in-law was afraid I would not be able to take care of his daughter. And I was proving him right. And so in facing that shame, I came to realize that there is a big difference between ambition and drive, and that I needed to develop drive. And so drive and discipline are essentially synonyms. So I had to develop the drive by doing things like making rules for myself. So I used to lay in bed 4 to 5 hours a day, every day. This is in my 20s. This is post getting a degree. This is like, you would think I was pursuing my dreams, but I was convinced I wasn't smart enough to make it happen. I felt lost. I felt hopeless. I felt alone. I didn't know how to pull all this off. And so in all of that, I would find reasons and excuses why I should stay in bed. And so I would. And so rule number one became, no matter what, I get out of bed in 10 minutes or less. And that one simple rule, as dumb and deceptive as it sounds, we all have that thing that if we put that kind of simple rule, and then you use it as a bright line, like there is no, oh, it's okay to get out of bed in 11 minutes. No, it's not. You said you'd get out of bed in 10 minutes, and you're either out of bed in 10 minutes and it was a victory, or you're not out of bed in 10 minutes and it was a failure. And you have to get very good at rewarding yourself and punishing yourself in a way that motivates you and moves you forward. You can't punish yourself so much that it becomes, detracting, and it diminishes your sense of self and makes you want to lay in bed even more, right? But at the same time, there can't be no consequences. So you really have to figure that out. But that was a key breakthrough in my life. And then, and this is why I seem so freakishly disciplined, because I learned this really meaningful thing, which is that skills have utility. Now, I'm going to let that sit for a minute. Now, the reason that's so important, once you realize that you don't read a book to check off a list, you don't get a college degree to please your parents, you don't study something on YouTube so that you can, clock hours watched and tell your friends that you've seen X number of episodes. You do all of that so that you can do something better than other people that allows you to serve people in a way that excites you. Now, once I figured that out, wait a second. So I can get good at something that lets me do something other people can't do, get results other people can't get, serve in a way that makes me excited and happy and brings me fulfillment. And the price for that is that I have to work really hard with a lot of discipline to focus, to get through the boredom so that I actually get good at this thing. And then I could get so good at something that people can't stop me. And that idea is so intoxicating to me. And I will tell a story that I hope changes your listeners' lives. Kobe Bryant, who has one of my favorite quotes, "Boos don't block dunks," said, oh my God, I love that so much. Now, Kobe worked very hard to make sure that he was so good that people couldn't stop him. And people were paid millions of dollars. The most talented athletes on planet Earth, scouted from all over the globe by the most talented scouts looking for the most talented people, and paid obscene amounts of money. And their one job was to stop Kobe Bryant from scoring. And yet, Kobe worked so much harder and got so much better that he scored 81 points in a single game by himself. Amazing. Now, that is being so good that you can't be denied. And that idea, and realizing that the only thing that stands between me and being so good that I can't be stopped, no matter how much people hate me, no matter how much money other people are paid to try and stop me, that I can actually outperform them and be so good no matter what, no matter how much they hate me, no matter how much they want to stop me, they actually can't. I can just straight outperform them. The only thing that stands between me and that is a set of skills. Once I understood that, I was eager to get out of bed, even though I find getting out of bed to this day very difficult. Every single day of my life, I don't want to get out of bed. But the way that I get myself out of bed is that I'm so excited to get that good at things that matter to me, that excite me, that allow me to do things to serve other people so that I have this fulfillment and excitement. It's so awesome and it feels so good that I put the rules in my life and then I follow them. But without all of that, without being excited about skills, without being excited about serving, without understanding that I can actually get so good people can't stop me, then I wouldn't. And I would keep laying in bed and I'd be back in that same position that I was in my early 20s. So I really want people to have that realization. But most people don't. And I think that they look at skills as just something, they're supposed to check that box.
You can't drop a Kobe Bryant without me dropping a Michael Jordan because
Let's hear it. Another person
Chicago. And one of the quotes I love from him is, "You must expect great things of yourself before you can do them." Such a mindset thing as well. And you bring up Kobe. He crashed in my neighborhood and I heard it, and I was out hiking that day, and it was such a bad deal. Oh, it was rough. Yeah, but no, that's an amazing. I love that. Boos don't block dunks. Is that what that is?
That's it.
Yeah, it's so good. You've got a ton on your plate. You have a lot of responsibility. I know you have assistants and people to help you, but what do you do when you want to go escape life for a day or some hours? Like what's your go-to self-care? You get a massage, you play some video games, what does Tom do to go F off and forget it all?
So I really don't have that gear, but I accidentally do something that does that. So first of all, I meditate, but honestly, that's to get me in a calm, creative state so that I can problem solve better. So I won't even necessarily count that. But I prioritize my wife on the weekends. And in prioritizing my wife, I do things like play video games and watch TV. And, I don't know what the rating of this show is, but, get to know my wife intimately. We don't have kids. So, we can definitely enjoy ourselves. And so in losing myself in her, I get that recharge, but I'm not trying to escape the other stuff or get away from it. I'm simply trying to make sure that my marriage remains insanely vital, and that I just get to enjoy it. Like nothing, and I mean nothing, has given me the level of sustained joy that my marriage has. And so I protect that fiercely.
I would love to be married to your wife. She's so awesome. Oh. Let's talk about relationships. You and your wife are very open, right? You've had many public talks and interviews with each other about your struggles, about your conversations, so revealing, so much to learn. And one thing that you and your wife have mentioned a few times in interviews, and I don't know if it's when you were dating or perhaps you were about to be engaged, but you took a very clear stance on something that honestly made my heart sing because I agree with it, but you sort of declared that you were never going to be in a sexless marriage. And I kind of want to hear more about that because yeah, I agree with it, but also you were very young and that's pretty badass to be very clear about something like that, a want. Did you see people in sexless marriages? Like, what was it about you that made you so bold to declare this at, a very young age?
The honest answer is I read a lot of Cosmo as a kid, which
yes,
I don't,
awesome.
I don't know if they're still like a thing, but I was very keen to get good with women when I was young because I was very bad with women. And I read a lot of those articles. I knew exactly where the clitoris was. I had no confusion about what that whole setup was about. And it was just funny reading things that were meant to be for women. And it felt like I was really getting this inside information. And they would talk about all of those kinds of topics. And I just found it endlessly fascinating. Now, since the time I was 14, I've only had 2 recurring dreams. One is very bizarre and people be like, what? So I won't spend time on that. The other one is I would have this recurring nightmare about being in a loveless marriage. Now, of course, getting older, you realize, oh, wait, my parents were towards the end of their marriage in a loveless marriage. And so obviously I was picking up on it, but I swear to you, I had no concept of that consciously when I was growing up. And so my parents stayed together until I left. And then 3 weeks later, they separated. So I'm actually very grateful to them, but I was clearly picking up on something. And so you put that, like, the fact that I've had this recurring nightmare since I was 14 and the fact that I'm reading all this Cosmo and it talks about bed death and, things like that. And I'm just like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. And also being, a 20 something male, the idea of going sexless was like, that's not on the menu. So let's be real clear. And you put it all together. And then also I just have a deep understanding of the biology and the neuropsychology of what's going on when you have sex. So it triggers pair bonding and trust. And, it's just this wonderful cocktail. And in fact, when neuroscientists look at what is the ultimate neurological state to get somebody in, like if we were going to say, what's the perfect state we'd want to get somebody in that they're depressed or they're anxious, the neurochemical cocktail looks basically exactly like what you get post-orgasm. And so that sort of feel good, trusted, held, safe, like there's all these things that, pump through your system and connection. And when you do that with high frequency with somebody that you love, it just reinforces this incredible bond. And so Lisa and I also do a lot of work to make sure that there's a lot there that bring us together. But, there's a really interesting thing that happens when you stay together for a really long time is that familiarity can slowly turn you into roommates.
And no one wants to have sex with their sister or their brother or
right, exactly. And that's like a real thing. And so it becomes like, you have to really be conscious of that. And so one thing, Lisa and I, because we knew that we were playing a long game and because we were very honest about the fact that humans are not perfectly monogamous. So if you just look at our physiology, the dimorphism between male and female puts us in the middle. So perfectly monogamous species, they tend to be almost exactly the same size, male, female. And then in species where it's like harems and, it's total promiscuity, the male tends to be much bigger than the female. And then there's also gonadal size, the size of the penis, there's all these things that you can look at. So anyway, humans fall right in the middle. And so on our first date, we talked about the following idea. I said, look, I'm always going to find other people attractive. So even if I get married to somebody, I'm going to be honest with them. I find other people attractive and I don't want them to be insecure about that. And they're going to find other people attractive. And I wouldn't trust somebody that says they only have eyes for me because I know that's not how the world works. You may be committed to me. You may only love me. You may only be invested in me. Cool. Same. But I know that you're going to find other people attractive. And so not, BSing each other, playing the long game, accepting sort of nature's role in all of this. We were just very clear that, hey, over time, if we're not careful, we'll become roommates. And so one of our early edicts was have sex and have sex often. And so, for us, it's on the menu every week. And we are very religious about that. Now, the way that I work, it's almost never Monday through Friday. So we make up for lost time on the weekends, but we have our own rituals that make sure that we keep that a very active, thriving part because that's the kind of marriage that we want. And I just think that it's better for the long-term relationship.
Absolutely. So wonderful the way both of you look and at your marriage and how you both work at it. When people like ask about what they're looking for in a mate or compatibility, you can have all like the sports in common, the TV shows, the humor, but I always believe like this, the overarching compatibility theme, I guess I would choose would be that as long as you admire and respect the way your partner thinks about the world and operates in it, because that can be universal for whatever it is that you love and respect or feel or what you think is right. So I know there's probably many for this question, but what do you admire and respect about the way Lisa looks at the world and operates in it?
So she is incredibly loyal. She is incredibly honest. She operates from the position of she wants to elevate. So as a partner, she wants me to win. She wants to elevate me. She wants to see me happy. And so that when you're in an environment where you're both going to have to compromise, if you're coming from a position of actually wanting the other person to win, it begins to make those compromises worth it when they're reciprocated. So she's just incredibly good about that. And then she's also really driven. And when she wants something, she goes after it. And she's got not only the ambition, but she's got the drive to see it through. And then she is so loving and so generous. And I love seeing her around other people. And nothing surprised me more than as I've gotten older, I've gotten more and more introverted, but nothing makes me happier than seeing my wife in a group of people, making them feel loved and welcomed and warm. It's really, really cool. And it lets me outsource some of that so that I don't have to be as gregarious and outgoing. I can be like, yeah, what she said. So, I get to bask in her glow, as it were, and reap the benefits from her, being so warm and so kind. But yeah, she makes me feel
she is
good.
very down to earth and so comfortable around so many people. I mean, yeah, absolutely.
No doubt.
So what kind of advice then do you have for some people? And I know it's like a laundry list, but if you could just take one nugget or a couple of, if people are looking for a long-term romantic partner, a husband, a wife, what are some things, like, hey, these are the top 3 things I look for,
All right. Get a pen and piece of paper or get your phone out. Take notes, everybody. Here we go. There are a few things that are absolutely critical. Number 1, make sure that they have a growth mindset. That is a key,
Mhm.
because you guys are going to be growing or not growing over the course of your relationship. And if Tony Robbins is right, and I think he is, and that progress is a foundational pillar to human happiness, and that never ends, then you know that you're going to be growing forever. You can either grow together or grow apart. If one of you has a growth mindset and the other does not, now you're in real trouble.
Yep.
The next is make sure that you have somebody that shares a substantial portion of your most important values. This is critically important. And I don't necessarily mean that has to be religious. In fact, Lisa and I did not share religious values when we got together, but we identified that wasn't, religious values weren't a huge driver for her, and I just didn't have any. And so, but we did have other values massively. And so we outlined what they were. We talked about them, and there were precious few where we collided, but we did collide on some. And so then it was navigating the places where we collided on those values, but even just taking the time to define what our values were and to negotiate around them. So there's one that we still collide on to this day, and we've had to come up with negotiating tactics to deal with this. I prize efficiency above almost everything. And my wife really values being tidy. Now, you cannot be both tidy and efficient. And so it drives me crazy when the things that I use frequently get put away, because it means there's just that extra friction. If it's left out on the counter where I always put it, then I know that, boom, I can grab it in 2 seconds. Whereas for my wife, that causes her anxiety. Now, I can't just say, suck it up, deal with your anxiety. That would be terrible. I want her to win. I want her to be happy. But that means that I'm now having to deal with frustrations over efficiency. Now, you could say, oh, Tom's just being silly, but I will say that I've made myself an extraordinarily successful man, largely on the back of my obsession with efficiency. So it certainly has played out in very tangible ways in my life. But we knew what that was, right? So going into it, it's like, we have a collision here. This is an area that we bump on over and over and over. And so what's our rules of engagement? And we've built rules of engagement around that so that we know how to deal with it. And then third, you got to be attractive.
Do you mind if I ask, what are the rules of
Please.
engagement there now? You're okay to leave it out? Do you compromise sometimes half the week? You're tidy? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. So if you know that I'm going to need it, I will express that, and I will let you know that I need this left out for the next, 24, 36 hours. So please leave that right where it is. I'm going to need it in, a very finite amount of time for a very specific reason. I communicate that. Now she knows. Beyond that, if you're going to put things away, put them away in the same place so that I don't have to hunt for them when they get put away. And so between those two sort of big things, and then on my side, it's if I don't need it to be out, don't leave it out, put it in the place where I know that it gets put away so that everything sort of has its place. And then, and this is a big one, if I know people are coming over where it really matters to Lisa that things are extra tidy, that I also help put things away, go the extra mile to tidy up for her as an act of service for her, which is part of her love language. And so she, really enjoys that as well. And so, yeah, those are our basic rules of engagement.
What are your love languages? What are your types?
So mine is words of affirmation and touch when it comes to her. And hers is quality time and touch. Acts of service she is conflicted as to whether she prefers active service or touch. She was just debating that today. So I will say those are sort of fighting for second place. But yeah, those are the ones that really matter to her.
Side note on that kind of thing. Have you ever taken the Myers-Briggs personality test or figured out what your Enneagram number is? I
have, but she has not. So I can tell you mine, but she doesn't know hers. So what's I'm yours? An INTJ.
Had you taken the test only once or over the years? Like, did it change? I took mine 20 years apart and it was the same, but I'm wondering if you've only taken it once.
I actually don't remember if I've taken several personality tests. I don't remember if I've ever taken the Myers-Briggs multiple times. So yeah.
And what about the Enneagram? Anything there? You ever?
I haven't done that, at least not that I remember.
I find them really fascinating. One of the things you talked about just now about having a growth mindset and that being a very important thing in order to grow in a long game type of relationship. In Impact University, one of the modules or one of the parts of your program is the mindset of a learner, and I don't know what it is, but I get a little bummed when I speak to new people and it seems like they're not curious or interested in anything. And I just go, how do you live? Are you bored all the time? Like,
Yeah.
I feel it's so important. It's been such a part of my growth. So let's talk a little bit about the mindset of the learner, maybe encouraging people to get a little bit more curious.
Yeah, it's interesting. I do wonder sometimes if, like anything, your level of curiosity is innately almost certainly a scale. And so some of us are
Mhm.
higher up on that than others. I've always been very curious. Now, I've also fed that curiosity, and then I've associated that with that whole idea around skills have utility. And therefore, if I learn something, then it actually makes me better and more capable. And so that spurs my curiosity. And so my only go-to there is to help people find areas that are interesting to them. So oftentimes people just haven't tried enough things. And then to dispel the myth that there is something that you're going to encounter that right from the word go, you're just over the moon. This is my mission in life. This is what I was meant to do. It doesn't usually work like that. You try something, you're like, oh, this is cool. This gives me more energy than it takes. That's all I ask of things in the beginning. If it gives me more energy than it takes, then cool. This is worth pouring some time and energy into to see if, as I engage with it more deeply, do I grow fascinated? If I grow fascinated, then this is a candidate for passion. And to find out if it's going to be a passion, you need to go down the path of gaining mastery. And as you go down the path of gaining mastery, then you get into that feedback loop that we were talking about earlier, where I'm learning this thing and it allows me to serve other people. And I get feedback from them that they love what I'm doing. That feels good. It makes me want to get even better so I can serve them even more. And you end up in that virtuous cycle. But it doesn't start with, oh, I encountered this. And look, already it's automatically a passion. You encounter it, it gives you more energy than it takes. And that's about all you can say for it until you engage with it. And then until you go down the path of actually gaining mastery.
I consider you confident as fuck. But every confident person has moments. You also talked earlier about how you had some moments of fearful, like, I don't know if I can do this and support my wife. And oh my God, my father-in-law, I'm failing everybody. But you showed him, by the way. So, can you share some moments where your confidence might have wavered, even if when you were already at this stage of success, and what kind of self-talk out of it? What does that look like for you if you still have a moment? I mean, even myself, we're comfortable talking on stage and stuff, but there's a moment where adrenaline gets going and, maybe it's more excitement than nerves, but sometimes I got to talk myself down and be like, whoa, hold on a minute. What are you doing here? You got this, kind of thing. So I'm just wondering, does that come up for you ever? Or is there a moment you can think of where it was really hitting you hard and you had to talk yourself down?
I used to struggle with self-doubt a lot, but I think at this point in my life, I probably don't think about self-doubt more than, 36, 37 times a day. So I've really pared it back. I think, everybody wants the negative voice to go away. I don't think it goes away, but I think you can leverage it into mental jujitsu. So I know that I'm going to have doubt. I know that it's going to, pop up, whether it's old thoughts, new thoughts. And what I remind myself is that I actually may not be capable of this yet, but the way that the average human animal is designed, and I'm average, the way that the average human animal is designed is you will get better if you put time and energy into gaining a skill. You just will. That is how the human brain works. And once I realized that that's just the strategy that our species has chosen, which is that we don't come pre-hardwired with everything. Instead, we come with the ability to learn in any direction at any time. So it's what I call the only belief that matters. The only belief that matters is that if I put time and energy into gaining a skill, I'll actually gain the skill. And so when I have self-doubt, I'm like, this is clearly just a timeline question, because I know that if I put time and energy into this, I am going to get better at it. And there have been precious few things where I've put so much time and energy into something and actually reached the point where I could no longer get better. In fact, I don't think I've ever gotten to a point where I truly could never get better. I've only gotten to the point where it was diminishing returns enough that I decided I was no longer as interested to keep pushing, given that I wasn't getting the disproportionate returns anymore. But self-doubt has truly become easy to deal with. And so that I will say. So whereas before it used to be crippling, now it is simply a habit loop trigger to remind myself that it really is just a truism about the human animal that I can get good at something. So the doubt is coming because I think I'm going to fail, but I'm only going to fail if I don't have the right skill set or there's something out of my control. And so, what's the old phrase? there's only two things you should never worry about. And that's what you can't control and what you can, because if you can't control it, then really don't worry about it. And if you can control it, do something. So that's where I come is you just, oh, okay, cool. I'm doubting it means I need to take action. I need to identify what skill it is that I'm worried is too weak that I need to shore up and get better at. And if I don't think I can get better at it, I bet I can find somebody that is good at it already, and I can partner with them or hire them or whatever the case may be. And so those beliefs come to my rescue, and they come so quickly now after, 25 years of working on this. They come so quickly that it doesn't even register on my face.
Yeah, it's almost like a ladder of possibilities show up versus the ladder of worst case scenarios. It's a totally different and now automatic. But it takes some work. What are your experiences personally, if at all, with creating your own reality through intention, not just action? So I guess I am talking about law of attraction, intention, the power of intention. Do you have any personal experiences with that?
Yeah, so I believe really, really strongly that whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So you have to believe, and that's a really huge part. But I don't think that we make things happen just by thinking about it. I think that the way the world is set up, though, is magical in its own way, which is that you really can by triggering areas of the brain that are designed for focus. And I'm sure you've heard about the reticular activating system. You buy a red car, you suddenly see red cars everywhere. And I think that's part of what's going on in this idea of manifesting is, look, if you don't say out loud what you're trying to do, and I can't tell you how many times this has come true for me, where I'll just tell everybody, hey, I'm starting a comic book company, and this is a real one. I'm starting a comic book company, but I don't know any comic book artists. And I was saying that to someone completely random that happened to be at my house. I had no idea that they were tied into anybody involved in the comic industry. And the guy was like, oh my God, I just met this really famous comic writer who now consults with people. Would you like to meet him? Yes, I would. And then he introduced me to that guy who introduced me to writers and artists and actually ended up writing one of our stories. It was just incredible. And I was like, okay, so you could say I manifested that, but also I was just talking out loud to someone then that actually knew this person and could help me get in touch. So my thing is take action, right? Don't just sit and think, take action, because it is shocking the number of people that will come to your aid once they know what you want. And if you allow yourself to believe that you can actually do it, then that will align your behaviors and you will go and do the things that put you in a chance to be successful. And so that is, what I try to focus people on is believe it so that you take the actions, but don't forget to take the actions.
So I've got a question for you about money, which is, you're a billionaire entrepreneur and you've been wealthy for a while now. Is there something you've caught yourself taking for granted, over the years? Is there a specific thing? Like, for example, I had recently had a flashback of when years ago I drove a very beat up old car. And back then my dominant thought was I just wanted a better, newer, safer car. Every time I got in it, I was bummed. And I've had several new cars since, but occasionally I think about that moment and I kiss the steering wheel, in remembrance and appreciation, right? How soon we forget sometimes. Do you have moments like that? Or are there anything particular where I always catch myself with that?
It's interesting. I still don't feel like a rich person. That isn't in my identity. And so for that reason, I'm very grateful that I didn't get, I was poor a lot longer than I was wealthy. And I'll use the word poor lightly, because I used to think I grew up poor and then I saw real poverty. I did not grow up poor.
Right.
But I've been through periods in my life where I literally couldn't pay all my bills. And there was actually a point where I had to scrounge in my couch cushions to find change to put gas in my car. So it's I've spent more of my life near that than I have spent, with real money. And so I'm sure that's a big part of it. But then also I just don't invest emotionally in being wealthy. I am very protective of my skill set, and I'm way less protective of my money. In fact, I, in building businesses, have taken huge risks with my money. But I think the key is I always anchor around this idea of I can get better at anything at any time. So in those moments where you're tempted to lose sight of, what's going on, who you are, I just come back round to that. So, whether it's being grateful for my wife, that's something I never want to lose sight of. being grateful for the things that I have is definitely something I don't want to lose sight of. But being grateful for what I'm capable of and what I'm capable of becoming, that's really the thing that I spend a lot of time and energy. If I stopped being grateful for having money, I wouldn't worry about it too much, because I personally would not be devastated if I lost my money. There would be a moment of knowing that like the societal perception of me has just shifted. That would be like, all right, that sucks. Everybody's looking at you and going, ah, ha, ha, you lost. But that would be a very brief moment for me, because if I have my wife and a stack of manga and I can afford a Netflix subscription, like I'm good. You know what I mean? As long as I have my outlet for meaning and purpose, I'm good. So the sort of, in the same way that it wasn't difficult for me to transition out of Quest because my identity wasn't tied up in it. My identity is not tied up in the success. So I don't worry about sort of losing sight of that. I put a little bit of energy into it just to, remind myself I live in a beautiful house and this is crazy. I'm recording this right now in a movie theater at my house. Like that's bananas. And so, it's just more enjoyable to not lose sight of the fact that that's magical. But the ones that I really focus on are my wife, my skill set, my family, things that would really scare me to lose.
Speaking of Netflix, I want to ask you a couple questions about just like some of your favorite things. So what are some of your favorite stand-up comedians? What makes you giggle and laugh your ass off?
Oh, wow. So what a fun question. My favorite stand-up comic right now is Dave Chappelle, because
absolutely
he has somehow turned commentary, like social commentary, the most insightful. Agree with him or disagree with him, because I certainly don't agree with him on everything. But dude, am I blown away? I'm blown away. The fact that he can make it funny and provide the most insightful social commentary around, like full stop. Truly somebody who's earned the GOAT status. That guy is just unbelievable. Now, I don't watch a lot of comedians, so he's probably the only comedian name that I can give you. But in terms of, are there people that I watch that...
What about a comedy film? Like, what if something comes on?
Well, I'll tell you a comedy show that I think is genius. In fact, if you had asked me the day before I saw the first episode of Ted Lasso, I would have told you that kind of show couldn't exist, because it's a show where everything ultimately goes right. And I was just like, how would you make that interesting? Like, he's a lovely human being who knows how to communicate well with people, who can stop a dramatic situation from spiraling out of control just by communicating well. And I just thought you couldn't make that work. And it's so good. So yeah, that show makes me laugh, is absolutely brilliant. I love it. Are there any comedy movies?
Or like a comedy film, something, even if it's old from when you were a kid, something like if it were to come on TV, you might stay there for a few minutes because you're like, oh, this is great.
Absolutely. Things that have made me laugh at any time in my life. I will tell you, there's a Christmas movie, maybe an odd reference, but when I say this movie makes me laugh every single time I watch it, no matter how many times I've seen it, Bad Santa. That movie has me in fits of hysterics. One of my all-time favorite movies from when I was a kid is a movie starring Weird Al Yankovic called UHF. It is hilarious. Love that movie. Beverly Hills
Have you met Weird Al in your...
I haven't. You want to talk about somebody that I would absolutely love to meet, but no, I have never.
He is like the nicest guy, and he actually does, like, people call him Weird Al. Like they're not like,
rightly so.
Cool with that, yeah. He's
rightly so.
He's considered one of the nicest guys. Everyone says the most wonderful things about him, and I got a chance to meet him once many years ago, and I've just heard nothing but wonderful things. But I have to check out UHF. I probably maybe watched it, don't remember it. I'll check it out.
Oh my God, it's so funny. It's
what about like, and I know you're a dude, but what about like what's your favorite like romance film that you've seen, or that really does make you feel like, ooh?
Well, The Notebook is wicked, and the way that it makes my wife feel, like that's worth the price of admission. Like for her, like when they die together, my wife has this whole thing with dying together. And so the fact that they die together, that's just her jam. And so, yeah, that's, I think, very cathartic for her. So
that you just like play it every morning just to get her.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's how we start every day. It is that one's really great. I really like if you've seen, again, another Christmas movie, I guess we should admit that we're recording this not long after Christmas, that it's called Family Man, and starring Taya Leone and Nicolas Cage, one of my all-time favorites. And their romance is incredible in that movie. Really, really enjoy that.
What about one more? What about action or thriller? Suspense, on your edge. It doesn't matter if it's like a Transformers type of movie or Matrix or even a.
Well, first of all, The Matrix is my all-time favorite movie, so
is it? Okay.
We can certainly go with that. I'll go with something contemporary that I'm watching right now that I think is unbelievably good, and that is Succession. If you actually want to know what it's like to run a business, not in that extreme way, but the way that just things are always going wrong. Just when you think something is going right, then you get sideswiped by something else. It is just unbelievable. The cast is extraordinary. The writing's extraordinary. Just really, really good. That show's unbelievable. What's
the last thing you did a binge on that you loved?
Probably Succession. Yeah, we just watched a bunch of episodes of that this past weekend. Yeah, unbelievable show. Narcos is another one that we binged. That's absolutely phenomenal.
Good. I'm a sucker for any cartel, anything. I don't know what it is.
You and me both. I'm with you. It's so crazy that's real. That's the bananas part, is that's a real thing that happens in real life right now.
That whole Narco, the first couple, those first 2 seasons too, and the whole Escobar. That was so riveting.
So good. Have loved every season of it. Just absolutely breathtaking.
So let's close out here by talking about, of course, you offer free, amazing content your wife does on Women of Impact, her show, your show, Impact Theory. So there's just hundreds of interviews with amazing people. You don't need to pay a dime to get great insights from you and your guests. But let's talk about Impact Theory, because this is a really great investment and commitment, and it's really affordable. And I'd love you to share more details on that with us. Of course, everyone can go to impacttheory.com and click on Impact Theory University, right? Or Impact University?
Yeah. Impact Theory University. Yeah. So this was, again, I don't feel like I own the ideas. The ideas are just the ideas. And the ideas were around long before me, and they'll be around long after my death. Now, the particular way that I explain the ideas, sure, but I want to get as many people into this as possible, because these are the ideas that set you up from a mindset perspective to go through that skill acquisition phase that I was talking about, so that you can get so good people can't ignore you. And in many ways, this is based on the quote, "Don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive," because what the world needs is more people who've come alive. And so that's really what we're trying to help people do, is get that mindset foundation that you need to go and build the skill set that's going to allow you to build fulfillment and have the kind of success in your life that you want to have. We have 2 tracks, mindset and business. You can get them both for one price. And by the way, if you can't afford it, we do offer a scholarship program. So we never, nice. Yeah. Look, the people that need it most are the ones that can't afford it. So, we want to make sure that people can get in there and get access to these ideas. It's changed so many lives, and it's been one of the most fulfilling things that I've ever done. I hope people
have hundreds of hours of content there. And do you still train students live every week? Is that part of it?
Yeah.
So what does that mean? I join your university, and then once a week I jump on and I get to see and hear you, and you're coaching and talking to us?
Yep. So you can take pre-recorded classes that are broken out into phases. So literally start with the first class, go to the second, then the third, so on and so forth. And then, like you said, once a week, you can go live with me, and I'm there to answer your questions. So anything that you're unsure about, unclear about in life, in the curriculum, anything, we spend that hour together live, and I answer people's questions.
That's so awesome. What's next? You're always creating and producing. Is there anything you can reveal that hasn't been revealed yet, or anything that you're really excited about that's coming out soon?
Web3 is my everything. Like, I am so focused on that. This is, I think, going to be a bloodless revolution. So every time that we've come to the levels of inequality that we have in the world right now, you've either had a war or revolution. And my hope is that Web3 and its giving access to ownership to your average person who otherwise would not be able to own any of the products that they love, or supporting the companies that they're supporting. And now people are able to own a piece. So like Impact Theory has are NFTs, which are Web3 enabled. And so you can buy the Impact Theory Founders Key that unlocks basically the future of everything that we're doing. And not only could you buy it and just reap the rewards from the things that the keys give you, like for instance, if you're a key holder, depends on your tier, but if you're a legendary key holder, for instance, you get Impact Theory University for free. It's one of many, many things that you get. And by doing that, you can just take advantage of things like that. But also that gets you access to a lot of resources that we create for people so that they can come in and create. I should say we're building those now, but we're committed to making good on the promise of Web3, which is ownership and participation, so that, for instance, we have a legendary key holder that when we released our Merry Mods project, which is a Christmas themed project with characters and a story and all that, he built a Christmas tree ornament company on the back of that IP. And so just Web3 is bringing up amazing things like that. Certainly does not need to be Impact Theory that you get involved with, but go learn about Web3, learn about the blockchain, learn about cryptocurrencies. Again, make sure you're doing your own research, make sure that you understand this stuff. And my advice is only spend money that you can afford to lose, because nobody knows where this all goes in the future. But my hypothesis is that this is going to be the greatest wealth distribution that we've seen as we move into this new era where value is being digitized. It's really exciting. It's absolutely incredible. And my ask to everybody is, this is the internet in 1995. And you can imagine, if you grow to understand it, build on top of it, find the companies that are going to be big and somehow, tie yourself to their success. Like, this is where real opportunity is created and where there's real potential for just huge wins. And so I really, really encourage people to look at it. All I'm saying is, look at it, do the research. If you look at it and think I'm crazy, fair enough. But I have a very strong feeling that 10 years from now, people are going to say, I heard Tom mention it. I didn't even look at it. I dismissed it out of hand. And I missed the opportunity to even just be a creator in this space. Like, it doesn't have to be some big wealth vehicle. This is creating all these incredible opportunities for creative people, for business people. There are going to be extraordinary companies built on the back of this new technology. And if you understand it, you can be an early mover. And it is always the early movers that get the benefits. And so, if we're really living through the new internet, we now have the benefit of having seen what happens to people that adopt the internet early. So I really hope that people take me seriously and go start doing some research on Web3. And just a really fast, Web 1 was read only, a web page. You went and there was something there for you to read. Web 2 was read and write. So you could go to a page like Facebook, you could read, but you could also publish your own thing there. Web 3 now is going to be defined by ownership and participation. So you come to Impact Theory and we're creating resources for you to create with our own assets so that you can build things like that ornament company on the back of what we're doing, that you can engage in that community and earn points for doing things. So it really is, it's huge and sort of outside the scope of this conversation. So I'll leave it at that, but just know that you should go do research because the opportunities are endless and incredibly exciting.
Yes, and you also have some great interviews sort of explaining NFTs and cryptocurrency yourself, and some great interviews on impact theory. So there's lots of good information to just jump into right there. Thank you so much, Tom, for sharing your wisdom with the world and us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks so much. And everyone else, we'll see you next time.
Hey listeners, over the years, a ton of companies have approached me to collaborate, but I will only promote companies whose products I believe in and that I actually use and consume on a regular basis. So let me tell you about some of my favorite companies that I can offer you discounts for. Rep Provisions, an amazing company doing incredible things for our planet, topsoil, and animals with regenerative agriculture, and it's my #1 source for quality pasture-raised meat and chicken. Visit repprovisions.com and use code L15 for 15% off. I'm also obsessed with a company called Carnivore Crisps. They make a lean, all-natural, and delicious alternative to conventional snacking, made with just real meat and real salt. Totally addictive, and my favorite ones are the beef brisket and the ribeye. Visit carnivorecrisps.com and use code PALEO10 for 10% off. I also love and regularly use Paleo Valley products. They make amazing supplements and delicious paleo products. I use the superfood greens powder, grass-fed beef sticks, the organ complex, and their bone broth bars. I love the lemon and apple. I also use their essential C complex and more. Visit paleovalley.com/promos/Elle Russ for 15% off. I also love Primal Kitchen. They make delicious paleo-approved, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and no refined sugar products, and I use them daily, from their collagen powders and sauces and marinades to their avocado and olive oil. So good, so healthy. Visit primalkitchen.com and use code L10 for 10% off. I also love paleo powder and use it almost on everything I cook. They make incredible seasoning blends, and they also have these incredible grain-free coatings that feel just like crispy breadings that you would have had prior to knowing that there's another way. So visit paleopowder.com and use code L15 for 15% off.